welcome to Diaspora Weekly. My name is Jermaine Nkrumah, and you're watching Diaspora Network Television. This week, we're doing something entirely different. We're having a conversation with our favorite sister, Her Excellency Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao, former AU ambassador to the United States. I conducted the interview with her when I was back in Accra and she was in Washington, D.C. But before we get to the interview, as we always do right here at Diaspora Weekly, I'll give you the jangle. So what's the jangle? This week's jangle is going to focus on African leadership. Now, some weeks back, I interviewed the same Excellency, Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao, and she made a statement that reverberated around the world. Her statement was that African men have let the continent down. And I can't help but think about that for a moment. Now, I have never been in leadership at the national level, so I do not know what our leaders encounter when they deal with their peers around the world. But one thing is for sure, the result has not been there, because when you look at the apparent continuing rape of Africa, where others come in to take what they want and leave. Others walk right into Ghana and other African countries, obtain visa on arrival, no problems. But when we get to their place, we have all kinds of problems going on. That's just an example. So the question remains, are we negotiating or are we interacting with our peers from developed countries from the same strength? We know that 33% of the world's resources are located here in Africa. So in business terms, we have something they want. They may have the money and a lot more resources, but they also need something that we have. And so when we sit down at the table and negotiate with them, are we negotiating from the standpoint of strength, that we're bringing something to the table and they are also bringing something to the table? Or are we negotiating from the standpoint that they are doing us a favor? Many times, I think when you look at the posture of some of our leaders, you can tell that they feel cowed, they feel intimidated, because they feel like the leader or the president from other country is coming in here to do us a favor, so they have to play nice. When you look at His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, he has taken a different path. When you see him speaking in front of French President Emmanuel Macron, the conversation is different. Dude, we appreciate your help and everything, but we got to do it on our own. So when you come at us as equal. Let's sit down and talk. And you know what? Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's perspective and his mannerisms and his posture and his utterances has been very, very appreciated by majority of Africans all over the world. How do we know this? We know because of feedback that we receive. In contrast, some other leaders, particularly one diplomat mentioned interaction with some prime ministers. I don't want to mention names. Some of them approach their encounters with leaders of other parts of the world as though they are doing us a favor. And so, going back to what Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao said, that African men have let the continent down. My question to you is, our leadership, have we indeed negotiated or interacted with leaders of developed countries on equal footing? I'll give you a story. I was part of a group that brought in one minister to a meeting back in Houston. We had prepared very hard for such a meeting. We were going to, and we were able to set up a meeting with back then Continental Airlines. They sent a representative to City Hall. We sat down at a meeting and we had our talking points and everything. But because this minister was the leader of our delegation, we had to give him the due respect to open the conversation. And this particular minister opened the conversation, pleading for them to come to Ghana. The rest of us looked at each other and we just shook our head. In business, you come at the table with what you are presenting, and they come at the table with what they are presenting, and you negotiate. This attitude that they're coming to do us a favor need to be balled up and thrown right out of the window, because this is the new Africa and the new generation that you, the leaders, are leading. They interact with their peers around the world as equals. So they expect nothing different from you, the leader of the countries. And so while I tip my head to leaders like Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo of Ghana and Paul Kagame of Rwanda and South African president, these leaders stand up and negotiate. They stand up and to be counted. They negotiate. They interact with their peers around the world as equals. But the rest of you, what are you doing? Represent and quit letting the continent down. My name is Jermaine Nkrumah, and this has been The Jangle. Stay tuned for my interview with Her Excellency Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao, where we began the conversation with developments, very positive developments that occurred at a conference between President Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire and President Macron of France. Stay tuned and we will be right back.
Are you expecting money from your relations abroad? Have you ever been defrauded of your money remittance? Open an ADB account today. Send your name and your account number to your relations abroad. Ask them to use MoneyGram direct to account service and receive your money in your account in minutes. With MoneyGram direct to account service, there's no PIN code wahala. You can now access your money on all ATMs in Ghana or send it to any mobile money wallet using ADB mobile banking app or shortcode *767#. Visit our branches nationwide to conveniently receive your Western Union, MoneyGram, RIA, Unitylink, Transfast, and Express Money transfers. Reach us on our Facebook, website, or call our hotline on 0302 210 210 for more information. ADB, truly agri and more.
This is Jermaine Nkrumah with Diaspora Weekly. We have with us our favorite sister, Her Excellency Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao. My sister, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jermaine.
Very good, very good. Listen, you've done great. You've taken some personal risk, even at the risk of you losing your job, but you believe in something, and now it looks like we're getting some results. Would you like to tell us about what is developing in Cote d'Ivoire with the conference, the meeting between French President Emmanuel Macron and President Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire? It looks like some pretty interesting things came out of there. Did you see that?
Yes, I did. I think it was truly a historic meeting indeed. I would like to, first of all, really congratulate both President Macron and President Ouattara for coming together for this history meeting.
Very good, very good. There was some interesting revelation. President Macron actually conceded that colonialism was a grave mistake. It quote unquote grave mistake. What do you think about that?
No, I think he did the right thing. It was a grave mistake, and that's why the conversation about reparations are definitely in order. So we're pleased that he did that, and now he needs to take it a step further.
Do you think President Macron is a new generation of friendship and that he's not going to subscribe to those colonial mentality?
It's beginning to look that way. I think an article from Financial Times of London on the 16th of December, where he is reported as having said he's ready to take any aggressive measures necessary if that's what the time called for. Because precisely what France is doing in Africa is not sustainable. And of course, like they said, the optics does not look good. Optics does not look good for them. The reality is not good for us as Africans. So I think he's a new leader. He's a new generation leader, and he understands what's right and what is wrong is right. And it's good to see him take the right position and do.
Okay. Now, you and I know that when politicians get together and the cameras are rolling, they say all the right things. Now, notice that President Macron was in Cote d'Ivoire, and he said what they want to hear and something that sounded very good with the cameras. But do you think moving forward, we can sustain change in that direction, where he begins to do the right thing moving forward and not look back?
Well, it's all in deliverance. Words are one thing, but we want to see the actions. He spoke about the African nations in West Africa no longer needing to send their bank reserves to the French central bank. We like to see that implemented. And we also like to see that extend to other in Central Africa. So let's implement what he has committed to doing. Input his money where his mouth is. So we want to see what he do. Now, when it comes to the ECO, we have a few questions. We want to know to the euro, is it a situation? Is there a timeline through which this pegging to the euro will be removed? Why is it being printed in France? Also, is this a temporary situation? I understand African countries may not be quite ready to handle all those issues on their own. But is there a time limit? Because to be completely free of France, we must be able to print our own money, and it cannot be pegged to the euro. So those are some questions that need to be answered when it comes to the ECO. But I think it's a baby step in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah, the money side was something that I was getting to. But the last question I had with you, in terms of Macron and his posture and where his head is now, what do you think back in France, because clearly he has his governmental system, and I mean, he's not a king, so whatever he says is not the final word. I'm sure there's a French legislature and all those other stakeholders in France who would have something to say about that. Do you think Macron is positioned to be able to withstand them, should they choose to fight him?
Well, if you look at the Times article that came out on the 16th of December, his own advisor advising him that the situation with Africa when it comes to the policy, I think the writing is on the wall. Even his own legislature can see the writing on the wall. The game is up. The nation of Africa can continue. The African youth are now awoken. They understand the issues, and they are articulating and simply asking that Africa be treated fairly, that the former colonizers, starting with France, should do what is right, what is just. What the African youth need, what the African citizens want, are exactly what the French citizens want. So we are simply asking President Macron to do the right thing. And right now, he's on the right path. And I would hope that his cabinet will understand that the game is up, that they have to do the right thing. Africa is a big continent. It's enough for all of us to share. We just want them to do the right thing. I think he will convince his cabinet, who too are seeing the writing on the wall.
Okay. Now, I was privileged to speak with an official, one of the French officials, actually a gentleman that's from Benin. I was speaking to him about the fact that the Benin president asked for their reserves back, right? And I think what he said was something to the effect that if Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal are the big boys when it comes to French and West Africa, and that unless they are on board, what Benin was doing was not going to amount to anything. Do you share that thought?
Well, again, Benin is a sovereign, and I would hope that they can stand on their own and simply repatriate what is rightfully theirs, what belongs to the people of Benin. I don't think that should affect the other countries. We would hope they come together as a group, as the 14 nations. That is really what's needed. Moving in together as a unit, speaking with one voice is what is needed. So I would hope they can all come together and speak with one voice when it comes to that.
Okay, very good. Now the ECO, you touched on it earlier. They're going to replace the CFA with the ECO. But now when it gets into the ECO region, remember, there are some other non-French speaking countries involved in that process. How that's going to work?
Well, there's still some holes there that needs to be filled in. It's a good step in the right direction, but why is it being still printed in France? Why is it still pegged to the euro? There are some questions there, and I understand the intricacies of trying to implement that currency, but on face value, right now it looks like it's just a renaming of the CFA.
Right, and you think the ties to France is not completely severed?
Oh no, not at all. To print the ECO, we're still tied to France.
Yeah, but if ECO, go ahead, please.
I was saying the fact that we're having the conversations with France is a good step.
Okay, but what do you think? So you are of the understanding that the ECO would be printed in France. Why would Ghana and Nigeria agree to that?
I'm not sure if they're that, but that was my understanding, that it's going to be printed and it's going to be pegged to the euro. So those are conversations I think need to be ironed out. We need true, complete liberation from France. We need financial autonomy in all of Africa.
Okay. So my question is this, and last week on my show, I made this point. You know, right now in African countries, officials are known, they're reputed to grab money from the continent and go and put it in their personal accounts, Europe, in Dubai and other places. So what is the fear that if France turns around and say, you know what, here's your money back, we give it to you, the politicians themselves are not going to pilfer that money and take them back into their personal account right back in France? How do we avoid that?
Well, hopefully there will be transparency. Also demand that the leaders be held accountable. This is a transparent process. The Africans are watching, and we're going to demand that there be accountability of those funds.
Okay, and so, well, the accountability is what we hope, but our history in that department hasn't been that great as a continent.
But in the past, we also have not known. You check, for example, up until I started speaking about the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, I was amazed at the percentage of people who simply had never even heard about the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. So what is needed is education. Now with social media and keeping up with exactly what is going on, there's more transparency, and as citizens, we have to demand that transparency. And I'm pretty sure the heads of states will understand that. This is a sensitive issue. The world is watching. The world has been waiting for this moment. And so we can't wait, because I do know for a fact what $500 billion do to the continent, the number of hospitals that could be built, the schools that could be built, the jobs that could be created. If you keep in mind that right now the projections, $1 billion a year for 10 years, Africa can completely rebuild Africa's infrastructure. That's only 2 years of what France has been taking out of the country. So definitely, the leaders will also have to show us what the money has done and what difference it has made to the lives of the Africans. Okay, the next one, I want to look at the UN factor.
I think right now, with what you brought to the fore with the conversation, one would have expected that the United States would be upfront in this conversation. Why the silence?
Did you say United Nations?
The United Nations, yes.
Yes, that was my other question as I was on this campaign to expose what France has been doing to Africa, is to say France is in the UN Security Council, and why isn't that the United Nations has done something about it? Because the United Nations is the watchdog for human rights violations around the world. So technically, when you look at France taking that amount of money out of the continent, then France would have to own every death occurring in those nations, because these people cannot have health care. All the unemployed youth, all the children starving to death, France would have to own that, because they're taking all those funds out of the continent, funds out of poor countries that need the money. The question is, why did the United Nations sit and watch that carnage go on for decades? So yes, actually, United Nations also had some answering to do.
Okay. Recently, all the African leaders gathered in New York, well, a few months back. I didn't anybody talk about that, did you?
To be honest with you, it goes back to the same reasons that why is it that the leaders were no longer talking about the continualization? It's because the fear is real. Our history shows us that heads of states were assassinated during coups, precisely because they wanted to do what was right for their citizens. So it was really a touchy issue. And I'm so glad now the world has been speaking out. The citizens of Africa have been speaking, particularly the youth. They heard the message now, they understand the issues, and they are ready for action. They are demanding. So I think at the end of the day, when it comes to issues pertaining to Africa, the world is not interested. They're only interested in going to Africa to extract what they can extract. When Africans are dying, the world doesn't care. It's sad, but it is a sad reality. That's why the Africans have got to come together and speak with one voice and address these issues aggressively, because we can no longer continue. Millions of children and women dying simply because we are being exploited and have been exploited for centuries. The game is up, and even the United Nations, we need to let them know that they too must do their job.
Right, very good. And talking about Africans standing up, there was a video that went around, it went viral, of the Minister of Roads in Ghana. He inspected a road that has been decimated by, I think, a Turkish builder or something right here in Accra. And he was on the ground. He was visibly upset. He ordered for his arrest. Did you see that video?
I saw that video and I said to him, bravo, every minister should be vigilant and protect people just like he did. So bravo to him.
What does it say? Does that serve as an indication of where the continent is now? Because it looks like, for all indication, you've given a new narrative to how we should be treating foreign investors.
We defend ourselves at every level. We're sick and tired of being pushed, sick and tired of being treated like second citizens. That has to stop. Give us the respect we deserve. We must demand our respect, but when it comes to Africa, we must defend Africa by any means necessary. So what he was doing was a perfect example of a leader who is defending his people. So we want more leaders to come out like that and not accept any nonsense from anybody. If you're going to come, what you will not do in your country outside Africa, do not do it in Africa. It's just that simple mandate, and let's make sure we're consistent in our messaging. So when they come to Africa, they must do the right thing, just like they would when they were doing it in their outside Africa.
Very good. Now, President of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has been very vocal about Africa doing for ourselves. In fact, the quote that he made, he said, he was actually speaking right in front of President Emmanuel Macron. He said, there is no Father Christmas out there that's going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And not only that, he was reaching out to the African diaspora. He made mention of the fact that if you're born Black, you are African and that you should come back. How do you think that is going in your organization? What role do you think you can bring into that conversation?
I have known, even an ambassador, I was already mobilizing African diaspora to participate in the development of Africa. I have known and believed that sustainable change can only come to Africa when the Africa in the diaspora come back home. Coming back home doesn't mean physically going home, but back. Participate in the development of Africa. The reality is the capacity that Africa needs to build a sustainable Africa is in the diaspora. The funding that Africa needs to build a sustainable Africa is in the diaspora. A united African diaspora has everything that Africa needs to build a sustainable Africa that we want. You look at the brain drain that has occurred over the past 100 years, starting with the slave. That brain drain must be reversed. And the only way to do that is to mobilize the diaspora, educate them, inform them about what is really going on so they do not waste time on frivolous things that do not take us anywhere. The lies that we have been told about our continent, many do not want to go back to Africa because they have a different vision of what Africa is all about. So education and getting the diaspora to understand that there's something amazing and wonderful going on in Africa, and that especially in view of the African Continental Free Trade Area, we are looking at an Africa that's ready to open its doors wide open. July of next, when we are implementing African Continental Free Trade Area, the Chinese are ready with their funding capacity. The Europeans are ready with their funding and their capacity. The true owners of the inheritance are still sleeping. So it is imperative. Every diaspora that should hear that we must come together. We must bring us together. Let's also be prepared to participate in the building of Africa come July. So I am challenging the diaspora through a diaspora fund to raise $1 billion by latest end of year. So we to build the Africa that we want. So yes, I'm on a mission, and like I often say, I play to win. The diaspora will come home in a resounding way.
Okay, and I share those with you, but in reality, those of us who come home, we run into the posture of our brothers and sisters at home that frown upon the notion that we think we from the diaspora have all the answers that Africa needs, and that those who were at home do not have those answers. Is that the message you're sending?
Well, I'm glad that you're talking to me from Ghana. In Ghana, of course, which is my second home by marriage. People who've been, I've been to the United, been to the UK, I've been to Australia. You call them Bintus. I have to agree that we Bintus, we have issues. We go home thinking, oh, no, tell them. Before you go home, I ask you to honor and respect for your brothers and sisters on the continent. While you may have something to offer, they too have something to offer that you do. What is needed?
Absolutely.
Attitude. I think that what we need are collaboration. So yes, Bintus, we not just our attitude when we go one. Secondly, we need to realize that projects that are funded out of the Continental Free Trade Area, humongous projects that not one person can address. It's going to take collaborations. That's why through the African Diaspora Fund, we hope that people who are of Africa can be shareholders in that fund. And it is the fund that's then going to invest in continental projects on the continent. It is about collaborations, as well as attitude adjustment. The Bintus, we have issues.
Lock on Hello Entertainment Box.
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 Every weekday at 12 and 5 p.m., DNT Newsroom brings you the most topical, fact-based, and up-to-date news from Ghana and around the world.
Politics, business, sports, and news from the diaspora, all covered in this comprehensive news update.
If it matters, DNT Newsroom will have it covered.
DNT News. Be informed.
Hello and welcome back. My name is Jermaine Nkrumah and you're watching Diaspora Weekly, a special edition. Before we went on break, we were talking about African leadership. And the next phase of the conversation shifted to how she was separated from her position as AU ambassador to the United States. Take a listen to the conversation. How did that occur? And do you think that your termination was as a result of your advocacy?
Well, let me say, we all serve at the prerogative of, in our case, as representatives, we at the discretion of the chair, but it really just wasn't handled properly. You know, to this day, the chair never really spoke to me. You don't counsel an ambassador and don't even have the decency to sit down with the ambassador and just have a conversation. I got a call from his chief of staff, and the rest is here. So it wasn't handled well. I think he's surrounded by people who are not advising him well, but that's for him to deal with. I'm past that. We're moving forward. It's about Africa. The African Union is us. We are the African Union, and the African Union is going to be as good as we make it. I'm looking forward, and it is about union. It is about us Black people and how we must come together to build the African Union that we want, to build the Africa that we want. We're moving forward.
Yeah, but there appeared to have been a smear campaign against you.
Yes, there was that too, which was really shameful. How do you send people after you have terminated my contract to come and find and investigate? They didn't tell me they were coming to investigate. They came in as a transition team, as a routine thing that's done whenever there's a change of leadership in a representational office. We go through the process. I get a clearance form. I'm completely cleared for separation with no pending issues. And then 3 weeks later, I'm already out of office, and this communique is put on social media without even talking to me, and I get to hear about it from a friend who saw it on social media. That is totally shameful, totally shameful. I don't even know who advised him to do something so stupid. It makes the union look really bad. But we're going to separate the two. The union is solid. We just have somebody in the leadership position who clearly is listening to the wrong people.
So do you think the commissioner was a personal vendetta, or do you think some of the leaders, I mean, the heads of states, what do you think they stand with that? Because the AU Commission is the executive arm of the African Union. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so if the head of the executive union, who is not a current leader of a country, does something that clearly looks like it was a retribution towards your advocacy, why do you think the rest of the leadership or the presidents of the different countries who form the African Union, why also the silence?
Well, let me say, like I said, we serve at the discretion of the chairperson. The one person, though, that he should have notified should have been my President Nanado. He didn't even do that. So I don't think it was a personal vendetta. I never had any problems with the chairperson. Not once did I have any disagreements with him in any way, shape, or form. Not once did he ever call me about any particular issue. So I don't think it was a personal vendetta.
But okay, so I think you just said something. You went into that position as a Ghanaian citizen, correct? Okay, and so your president is Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the president of Ghana.
That's correct.
And you were terminated, looks like unjustifiably, but he wasn't even informed about it.
That's correct.
So then it looks like he should have taken it.
It was wrong. The process was wrong. And so, but it's really something that I have already discussed, and I want to just move on, put it aside. It's behind both of us, and we need to move on as Africa.
Okay, so talking about moving on, how's your advocacy going?
The advocacy is going on very well. The diaspora are ready. They're calling me, Ambassador, what is way forward? We want to go home. So I am in the process of registering an entity called African Diaspora Initiative. This is where we are going to converge as African diaspora to chart the way forward as the sixth region. So we have a voice, we can communicate with our heads of states and also let them know how we feel and that we have been left out for far too long, but now we are organized, we are ready to come home, we are ready to answer the call from the African heads of states who I know would like to see the diaspora come home in a unified way.
Now, if they did not say anything when you were so clearly, unjustifiably terminated, when you put together this coalition from the diaspora and you have the money, $1 billion, you said, coming in, on your reentry, do you foresee cooperation or sabotage?
Total cooperation from the heads of states, because that's all the heads of states want. They want the diaspora to come home. They want the diaspora to bring the capacity that the diaspora need. They want to see the diaspora come home and take what is rightfully theirs. I can assure you, I can't think of any head of state who would not want to see billionaires and millionaires come out of their own people. And that is what we're talking about. The heads of states want the diaspora to come home. And I do not see any problems at all. They will welcome us.
Those of us who have been in diaspora advocacy for quite a while, we know that there's a bit of a disconnect between what politicians tell us when they come abroad and how they react to us when diasporans come home to want to contribute. Have you seen any evidence of that?
Again, I go back to the Bintu attitude, and I speak to the diaspora often about this. So, some of us, we think we know it all, and we want to tell people at home what to do. That's not going to work. It is simply not going to work. Even if the tables were turned and I was in Africa, I'd run you out of town as well. We just have to be realistic about it. Let's call a spade a spade. There's a need for attitude adjustment. There's a need for us to understand that the home that I knew 20 years ago, 30 years ago, is no longer the same. Things are moving on in Africa. There's change in Africa. And even the diaspora who are Africans, we need to let them know that no, you are no better than the African on the continent. You don't know any more than the African does. You know something that the African might not know on the continent, but also the Africans know something that you do not know. It's about collaborations and attitude adjustments. That's what we need. So there's a strategy. I often talk about a reintegration center that we need to have in order to help diaspora go back home with the right attitude. So it starts with the education, and the Institute is going to be doing some of that as well.
Okay, very good. So in ending, final message to the first message to diasporans, and then the second message to our brothers and sisters at home.
To the diaspora, I say, the fund is in the process of being registered. It should be ready in February. Be ready and be prepared to start investing in Africa through the fund. Also, there's a database that's going to be launched beginning first part of January. Be part of that database as well. And to my brothers and sisters on the continent, we want you to know that we feel your pain. We understand the suffering. We're now prepared. We're organized, ready to come home and play our part in building the Africa that we want. To President Macron, I say thank you for being a leader with a new vision. Thank you for being a leader who understands that the days of exploitation of Africa are over. Thank you for being a leader who understands that time for change, drastic change, is now. So we are with you. We are going to work with you to see to it that we can enjoy Africa together as equals without France exploiting Africans and being the superior power that we clearly are not. We're all humans. What the citizens of France need is exactly what the citizens of Africa need. So we thank President Macron for making this first step in the right direction. We are not quite there yet, but we will work with you to see to it that Africa is truly liberated and that Africa is going to be engaging France as equals, but not only France, but all other colonizers. We must engage each other as equals. The time for exploitation is over. And to President Ouattara, I say congratulations as well for calling this historic mission. We are now in the right direction. A few kinks to sort out, but we are in the right direction. And for that, congratulations to both President Ouattara and President Macron. Keep up the good work, and let's continue to work together.
And from Diaspora Network Television, we want to thank you, our dear sister, for beginning the advocacy, calling into the public domain something that had apparently been hidden from the public domain, the treatment of France towards its former colonies. You really have made history, and history should be kind to you. And we also want to thank you for making time to speak with us. This has been Diaspora Weekly, right here on Diaspora Network Television, DNT. My name is Jermaine Nkrumah, and we thank you for watching. Thank you, my sister.
Thank you, my brother, for having me, and happy holidays.
Hello, my name is Kofi Opon Ochre, and I bring you NASA on DNT, a program designed to expose corruption and indiscipline in our society and advocate for the punishment of these offenders whose activities impede national development. The National Road Safety Commission indicates that Ghana loses $230 million to road accident, with over 1,600 deaths recorded every year. In 2018, Shraj report indicated that Ghana loses 13.5 billion Ghana cedis to corruption. And United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF has also stated that Ghana loses $290 million to poor sanitation alone. This is not right. So make a date with me, and together let's name and shame the offenders of the law. NASA, see something, say something.
Hello and welcome back. When I conducted my interview with Her Excellency Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao, I was back in Accra in my office at DNT. The next conversation, which I conducted from here in Houston, Texas, is with Honorable Michael Osei Mensah, who is the head of Organization of Ghanaians Abroad, and also the Ghanaian Community in France Council called GASIF. We had a continuing conversation from my conversation with Her Excellency Arikana Chihombori Quao, and it appears that Honorable Michael Osei Mensah had a different perspective, and so I want you to listen to the conversation. France has been in the news lately. You've heard of former AU Ambassador to United States, Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao. He has been very vocal about France and its relation with its former colonies. In fact, he has called France a bully and basically taking money from those places. You live in France. What do you think?
Well, I've lived in France for 38 years now. And I will not say, oh, that's me. I'm not speaking for other people. I don't see the French as bullies. And I've listened to some few interviews with Dr. Quao, right? That's the name. But I cannot pronounce the first one. Yes. Well, she is from Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, right? Rhodesia.
That's correct.
Yes, and married to a Ghanaian. You know. That's
correct.
I don't have anything. I think she's a brave woman, and even in some of the interviews, I heard you or someone else referring to her as Yas Antoine and so on and so forth.
Okay.
I think it's a good compliment for her. She's a bit rebel. I listened to her interview, and I saw that she's gone through a lot. Right from her country, she saw a lot of injustice, and I think she sees a lot of injustice in so many places. She's not wrong, but life is not perfect, you know. In life, even when you look at the 5 fingers, some are taller than others. Some other fingers would have said, "Oh, we are 5. Why are we not of the same height, the same length?
Actually, she's not saying that. She's not saying that. She's saying of the 5 fingers, and let me put it on the screen here, right? Of the 5 fingers, everybody recognizes some are taller than the others. But her problem is the taller ones are being unfair to the shorter ones. That's her main argument. Yeah. And that's what I want to see what you think.
Well, I wouldn't want to challenge her. You know, I don't want to be in a sort of debate with her because I don't know her much, and I don't know where she gets her arguments from. But I look at life in a different way. See, I'm surprised. I would have wished that what she is saying comes from a francophone. I'm not saying that she's wrong. I'm not condemning what she said. But I would have wished that somebody from a country which is suffering what she's accusing France of comes out to say that, hey, France, please stop. You are making us suffer. What is going on? You are bullying us so much. We are tired of you. So,
but you know as well as I do. Wait, you know as well as I do that in many cases the victim is less able to talk than the bystander. What you are telling me is that if you're walking down the street and somebody is beating up on a person, you want the person to defend himself and say, wait, why are you beating me? When you, the Good Samaritan, can say, wait, you cannot do this to this person. That is pretty much what she is saying. But you rather the people from France speak for themselves. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I wouldn't liken what she said to the example that you've given. I don't think it's the same. I don't think France is beating somebody down the street. You know, the Francophones are people like us. The Francophones are people like us. They've lived with the French for so many years. And I don't think they are so easy or they are so naive to be unable to see somebody who is bullying them and then cry out their tiredness. I think what she is saying, what the defense that she's giving to the Francophone is something that can be easily done by the Francophones. So, personally, I think somebody who lives in that situation would appreciate it better. You would appreciate it better.
Well, then let me give you this. Let me give you this information then. Let me give you this information. I was in a private conversation with a diplomat. Of course, I'm not at liberty. I haven't cleared it with him, so I cannot say that on camera. But this diplomat said this, and I quote, what Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao is saying is something that are discussed amongst ourselves as African diplomats in private, but it is something that you don't come out to say it. Basically, this unquote, basically this diplomat is saying that, yes, all understand that it's unfair, but it's something that they are working on in private. So for her to come out and say that in public basically has upended the process. But you know, if they've been saying that African countries obtained their independence 60 years ago on average, and if they've been talking like this for 60 years, at what point should someone come out and say, would it take for someone to come out and say, look, enough is enough? Basically, that's her issue. So do you have an issue with a non-Francophone saying that, or is it an African issue that any African should be able to address?
Jermaine, who am I to condemn, or who am I to say Dr. Quao is wrong? She is not wrong. But as the diplomat told you, she told you that these are things that are on their lips. They've been discussing it. You know, in everyday life, even within the nuclear family, within that simple family of a father, a wife, or even a husband and a wife, there are so many things that can be seen as injustice. But we keep talking about them. Sometimes you see somebody in a family where you outside think that the husband is a very bad person. He is a bully, but the wife still stays in there. you see that the children may say, oh, our dad or our mom is. They talk about it and they try to improve upon the relationship because we need each other. If the Francophones have been with the French till now, it's because there's a mutual interaction, the mutual cooperation, which helps them. But it doesn't mean that it's perfect. Because when you want to look at imperfections, the imperfection is everywhere. It's not a scoop saying that something is imperfect. Imperfections are everywhere. When you want to see imperfections, you'll see them. When you want to see advantages of relationships, you'll get them. So it's good that Dr. Quao talks about that. But her question, her preoccupation has been answered by the diplomat who told you that it's something that they discussed. Discussing it means that gradually they want to come out of it. But sometimes when you come out of certain situations brutally, then you collapse. We've seen a lot of regimes and a lot of governments in Africa, standing for their rights against the so-called colonial master at that time. They get out of it, but the next thing you see that there's a coup d'etat and the country collapses. You see, it doesn't mean that coming out independent was wrong, but how you come out of it and how you sustain it, your liberty is something which is very, very important, which must be worked out. Because if you don't do it that way, then there's a problem. African countries are not big, huge countries as you see. African countries are breakups. When you talk about the Francophones, the Francophones is not just a country. You have Togo, you have Burkina, you have the Ivory Coast, you have the Cameroon. They all come with their governments, with different policies, different relationships to France and to other countries. So it's not like somebody can stand up and say, oh, I'm talking for all the Francophones. All the Francophones have their different approach. Even in Ghana, talk about our country, Ghana. Look at the ethnic groups. We have our traditions. We have our way of looking at things. They're very, very different. In Ghana, I know that we have, in the country like Ghana, I think practicing polygamy, correct me if I'm wrong, is legal in Ghana. But in other places, somebody will tell you it's illegal. And we are still in Africa. So these things are things that you have to manage. You don't just stand up and say, in any case, I wouldn't want to stand up and say, oh, polygamy is bad. Polygamy can be bad in my area. But what about the other area? So it's something that is on their lips. What she's saying is not wrong, but it's something that they have to work out gradually. I wouldn't come out and condemn directly like that. I would say this is something that we have to work on and have to negotiate. And I wouldn't call French bullies. No, I wouldn't do that because I don't know how it all came about. But I would want to look into it. How far we've come with the French countries and the so-called colonial masters, how far the system has brought them, and look at how the collaboration can be ameliorated. That is how I would want to approach it.
Well, in hearing you, there's something she said in my interview with her that stands out. And let me know what you think about that. She said unequivocally that African men have let the continent down. Do you agree?
Well, men as in African males or men as in African humanity.
Let me put it in context. In her view, all the continents are competing. You have Africans on the world stage. Africans are mostly represented by men, right? As other men from different different continents and everything. And when you look at the results, we African men, we have not competed. We have allowed other people to run over us. Do you agree with it or not?
I don't agree. I don't agree because, in a competition, he talks about competition. He talks about competition. I will talk about life. Because me personally, I don't see competition in life. I see people living. Somebody might be rich. Somebody might be less financially advantaged. Somebody might be a pilot. Somebody might be a doctor. When a pilot sits in front of his piloting cabin, he needs to eat. When he gets in there, he needs to get somebody clean the place. So I don't see, personally, I don't see people overriding others. See, but when he chooses the word competition, then it means, of course, in a competition, somebody must lead. And somebody must lead. When you go to a football competition,
okay.
Today somebody is leading, and tomorrow you can also lead. You learn from how the person got in front of you, and gradually you can come there. Ghana used to be a strong football nation, right? So, and now where are we? Others have taken over. So it's not about, we cannot all be first.
But some will say Africa has never led, though. We've never led.
We've never, you know, when you are in a school, you don't have to be, when you go to a medical school, you don't have to be the first to become a doctor. You have to do well. You can be the last, but if you got the average and the standard, the required standard, if you are even the last, and for instance, they need about 50% for you to be seen as a qualified doctor, and you're able to get it, and you are the last person on the list, and you become a doctor. You know, we can look at the negative part of Africans. Of course, as I told you, imperfection is everywhere, and when you want to look at that, you will see a lot of them. But you look at even our country, Ghana. Look at where we've come from. Some people will say we are not doing well, but you look at a lot of things. When I was a child, we didn't really have mobile phones. We look at the International Airport today, it's not the same. Recently, I was in Ghana and I drove from Accra up to the last point of Ghana, Burkina Faso, and I saw that Ghana was a very, very beautiful country. We have some imperfections, but when I used to live in Sunyani, I saw the development that have come up there. Look at, when I was in Ghana, we had only 3 universities. How many universities do we have now in Ghana? Tell me, answer me.
So then let me put you this final question.
So we are moving forward. We are moving forward. But it doesn't mean that we have to be first. Pardon?
Let me ask you this final question. When you look at France, right? When they interact with other people, right, other countries, other in the international stage, the overriding object is France's interests. Okay, when you look at United States, they look at United States interest first. Every country, they look at our interest first and foremost. Can you say the same about how we Africans have conducted ourselves on the international stage when it comes to seeking the primary interest of our respective countries?
But Jermaine, do you see Africa as a country? Africa is a continent.
No.
You talk about the United States.
That's why I'm saying respective. That's why I'm saying respective countries.
The United States is a country. It's a huge one. 52 states coming together to form one nation. Talk about unity. When you talk about France, you have France. I mean, in the hexagon here, where I'm in now.
Okay, so then let me use this. Let me use this then. African Union versus European Union. Do you think the European Union? European Union
there is something that Africans
the interest of Africa? What's that?
German. There's something that Africans need to. Until we do that, we shall remain where we are. I'm not saying that we are doing bad, but I'm not very, very negative. I'm someone who always prefer the positive sides of things. But it doesn't mean that in life you can always do it. If we want to say Africans, if we want to do comparisons that you just made with the United States and Europe, then Africans must come together. The whole of West Africa. We can start. We have West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, North Africa, and Northwest, and so on and so forth. At least these regions can come together and form one country. Look at Ghana. Ghana is smaller than so many states in the United States. You see, you go to the United States, talk about California. California is within the first 10 best economies in the world. That's the state. So if Africans, because a lot of Africans like Dr. Quao and yourself, when we listen to you, we see that you look at Africa as a country. It's very, very good. But we have to bring it into reality.
Actually, I don't. Let me clarify something. Actually, I don't. When I first posed the question, I said Africans when we're dealing with others based on our respective countries. But since you put it like that, I said, let's compare African Union, which is a group of countries that have come together under one umbrella, and then compare it to European Union, which is also a group of countries that have come under one umbrella. When you look at how the African Union is negotiating or interacting with the world community versus when you look at European Union interacting with the world community, how much would you say that African Union has sought the interest of Africa more so than European Union have sought the interest of Europe?
Yeah, you see, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable comparing the African Union to the European Union. But I know when I talk about France, for instance, which is a member of the European Union, when I talk about Germany, when I talk about Spain, when I talk about Italy, these countries are very, very pretty much, they are in a strong melting pot. They are really together. You know, the last time I was in Ghana, and I wanted to cross from Ghana to Burkina Faso, I saw not less than 3 barriers. When I drive from Belgium to France, I see no barrier. But what I want to say is that these strong countries in the European Union, they have alliances, they have strong alliances, and they have strong alliances with other countries like the United States, which are also connected to other unions like the East African Union and even Australia. You see, it's not only there are countries that you see them when you are in certain countries. Sometimes you think the country is just there, but they have alliances that opens them up. When I hold a French passport, I can travel to so many countries which are not within the European Union. Can we say the same for the Ghana passport? Can we say the same?
Yes,
for
with Ghana passport, I can go to. With Ghana passport, I can travel to any West African country without a visa.
African country. I'm saying that, can you go beyond the African continent and maybe Seychelles and Madagascar, beyond the African continent and its small islands surrounding them? Can you go beyond? Can you go beyond, for instance, travel to Australia or travel to the US or travel to anywhere in Europe with a Ghanaian passport
and
or
guess what?
A Nigerian passport without visa? You can't.
All right.
But when
Let me answer your question.
When you hold a French passport, you can travel to the United States and do. You can travel to Australia as far as Australia. Australia is about 28 hours from France. You can travel there. You can go to China. When you go hold the French passport, you don't need a visa to enter China. You don't need a visa to enter Egypt. You don't need a visa to enter Morocco. There are about 80% of the countries on this planet, on this continent, in this world. You can take a European passport and just fly in there. Can we say the same for our African countries? So what I'm saying is that these countries, they are strong because of their unity. We need to strengthen ourselves by uniting. When we united, we stand. When they see us together and see us, we have one common government. We are one people. We speak one language. We speak one language as in means of and interacting with the other communities. Then we shall be seen as a power. And then they will say, "Oh, okay, now you are able to travel." You are able to travel to.
I think you may have inadvertently made the point I was trying to say about competition, and that is this: the fact that the French can pick up his passport and just travel to any country in Africa, get there and show up at the airport and say, "Oh, I need a visa on arrival," and most of the time he will obtain the visa on arrival. And we in Africa cannot do the same when we go to France that right there tells you that maybe we haven't been competing as well as we should. That's the point that I was trying to make.
We in Africa, as in a country, but we in Africa, and Africa there is a continent. So that's why we have to move forward.
Okay.
Do a lot of homework on our unity, unify ourselves more, and become a power like the others. Because when you talk about the United States, do you see when you want to compare United States and Africa, look at the United States as 52 countries coming together. Whereas maybe the number, I think we have our 54 countries in Africa, right? The number of African countries is split out. See, we are just separated here and there. We have different government, different systems, and different. So when the United States is dealing with Ghana, he's not dealing with Africa. It is dealing with Ghana. When he's dealing with Togo, it is dealing with Togo. But if we come together, look at our armies, look at our police corporations, look at our diplomats, and so on and so forth. If we put all these resources together and we say, hey, now we have one leader, we have one president, and the others are affiliated to that government, then when people come to see us, they will stand upright.
Well, it's been a great couple of conversations with people that I hold very dearly. You have been watching a special edition of Diaspora Weekly right here on Diaspora Network Television. My name is Jermaine Nkrumah. We will be doing more of these where we're conducting interviews with Ghanaians spread over the world. Today, it was Her Excellency Dr. Arikana Chihombori Quao, who's a former AU ambassador to United States, and also Honorable Michael Osei Mensah, who is the head of Organization of Ghanaians Abroad and Ghanaian Community in France Council. Next, we will have conversations with heads of Ghanaian communities all around the world. This is the new phase of Diaspora Weekly, where we get you introduced to the Ghanaian communities and indeed the African communities all around the world. This has been Diaspora Weekly. It's been great having you. Have a great rest of the day and watch the next several programs that we have coming to you. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.